China is going to eat our lunch? Come on, man. They're not bad folks.
The competition is not bad. Competition that's healthy is good.
Corporate America and the big money interests have told us that NAFTA is a good deal. I don't believe them.
I quite frankly think that both the arguments for and against NAFTA are vastly overblown.
A 2013 trip to China getting new attention this morning, not for what Joe Biden did, but for who he brought with him. His son, Hunter, joining the then vice president on the official visit to Beijing.
Biden's son inked a $1 billion deal with a subsidiary of the Bank of China just 10 days after he and his dad visited the country in 2013.
This is the reason why I've held the view for so many years and continue to hold the view that a rising China is a positive development. We want to see China rise, to continue to rise in a responsible way that will benefit you most, China, because you have an important role to play. I have not taken a penny from any foreign source ever in my life. What a beautiful history we wrote together.
Let me tell you a story. The story of how a senator from Delaware and former vice president sold out the United States economy, gift-wrapping global manufacturing to China and enriching himself and closest family in the process, and how a little laptop left at a repair store in Delaware might prove it all. NAFTA was supposed to expand our exports and create new jobs. At least, that's what it was pitched as. If you don't know what NAFTA is, allow me to give you a crude rundown. NAFTA, short for North American Free Trade Agreement, was a deal between the United States, Canada, and Mexico, which created a free trade zone encompassing all three countries, essentially meaning products could flow freely between three nations, tax-free.
A defining moment for our nation. I spoke with one of the folks who was in the reception just a few moments ago, who told me that he was in China watching the vote on international television when it was taken. And he said you would have had to be there to understand how important this was to the rest of the world.
Sounds good, right? In practice, not so much. It forced American manufacturers to compete with cheap Mexican labor. The deal went well for Mexico, but not for long. These handicapped economies gave way to a rising giant in the manufacturing industry, China. After it gained similar access to the American economy by joining the World Trade Organization back in 2001. In 2000, the US supplied Mexico with 60% of its office machine and computer imports, and 70% of the peripheral parts for those machines. 10 years later, the US held only 10% of the Mexican import market for each sector. By contrast, China held 13% of the office machine import market and 5% of the parts market in 2000. And 9 years later, it had 48% and 58% of those markets respectively.
I see it in the end that 3, 5, 7, 10 years from now, we're going to look down at this issue, and in terms of the context in which it's being debated about creating jobs or losing jobs, this is essentially going to be a wash.
NAFTA was hated by a lot of people straight from its inception, and there were talks of restructuring it for a long time, by multiple administrations, but all failed to do so, including the Obama-Biden administration. Only one administration actually went through with structuring a new deal. Love him or hate him, that would be the Trump administration. Even Joe Biden had to reluctantly admit it was a better deal than NAFTA.
Something else he did is he renegotiated NAFTA.
He did.
He renegotiated NAFTA. Now, when you ran for president and when Barack Obama ran for president, you both said you would renegotiate NAFTA. You didn't. He did. Nancy Pelosi said that the USMCA, which President Trump signed into law, is a, quote, victory for America's workers. But doesn't he deserve some credit for that? It's better. The USMCA is better than NAFTA.
It is better than NAFTA.
Seems like that was a bitter pill for Biden to swallow. Do you know what else is a bitter pill for Biden to swallow? How all the seedy deals with Hunter Biden and Chinese government-affiliated companies are starting to come to the surface. Deals that make it clear why Joe Biden is probably so soft on China as a whole.
If this is a hoax, it is the most complex, sophisticated hoax ever perpetrated.
Was Hunter Biden profiting off his dad's work as vice president, and did Joe Biden allow it? We're talking about millions of dollars in at least 2 countries.
Unknown to the press back then, Hunter Biden was forming a Chinese private equity fund, planning to raise money, including from Chinese investors.
Biden's son inked a $1 billion deal with a subsidiary of the Bank of China just 10 days after he and his dad visited the country in 2013.
It smells to high heaven, it smells like corruption, and every day on the mainstream media they say, oh, there's no there. This has been investigated, there's no corruption. I think the American people don't buy it.
It all starts with Joe Biden becoming the point man for China relations during the Obama administration. 10 days after leaving from a trip meeting with multiple Chinese officials, Hunter's firm announced a $1 billion deal with the Chinese government. Hunter and his Chinese partners established a private investment fund by the name of Bohai Harvest, otherwise known as BHR Equity or BHR Partners. Operated out of the Shanghai Free Trade Zone, Hunter Biden got a seat on the board as well as a 10% equity stake in the company. But this was just the start regarding the troubling story of Bohai Harvest. While Obama was filing complaints to the World Trade Organization against China, trying to control the rare earth mineral market, and even after the World Trade Organization agreed they were trying to do so, BHR Equity helped China win a deal for the largest copper mine in the Congo.
A dispute over rare metals, which has been building for years, has come to a head. China has been challenged for restricting its exports. It provides 97% of the global output. The US, EU, and Japan have fired off a formal complaint with the World Trade Organization.
Not only that, perhaps the most damning deal of them all is BHR buying a minority stake in CGN, a Chinese nuclear company, later found to be under investigation by the FBI for stealing nuclear secrets. 18 months after investing in CGN, it was indeed found a nuclear engineer and the company were charged by the Justice Department for exactly that, stealing nuclear secrets.
Nuclear engineer Alan Ho pleaded guilty to spying for China 2 weeks before President Trump was sworn into office.
Alan Ho was a senior engineer with a Chinese company called CGN, China Global Nuclear. This is a company that Hunter Biden's investment firm, Bohai Harvest, buys a stake into in 2014.
Alan Ho, who lived 5 miles from Joe Biden's home in Delaware, spent 2 decades acquiring highly guarded atomic technology on behalf of a company controlled by the Chinese military.
This seems to be painting a very worrying picture. The trade deals, the private firms, and the underhanded cash. It can't all be true, can it? Well, we aren't quite finished yet. Let's talk about a little laptop abandoned at a MacBook repair store in Delaware and how its contents might just prove everything.
These emails came from a laptop, an Apple laptop, that was dropped off at a Delaware computer repair shop last year and then abandoned there.
Something that was actually reported to be on Hunter Biden's laptop, and that is an email in which the breakdown of a business deal, the percentage distributions from a business deal with a Chinese energy company would be doled out, including 10% for, quote, the big guy.
After a certain number of days with no payment, the shop's owner took legal possession of the laptop. He looked inside. There were tens of thousands of emails, including exchanges with representatives of foreign companies and foreign governments.
The reference to the big guy in the much publicized May 13, 2017 email is, in fact, a reference to Joe Biden.
If this is a hoax, it is the most complex, sophisticated hoax ever perpetrated. It doesn't seem possible. There are too many. There's too much detail.
I guess they're right. Truth really is stranger than fiction. How on God's green earth can Hunter be so careless? Not only did Hunter take this laptop with tons of self-incriminating material into a public repair shop, he left it there, never to be picked up again. How do you forget about something like that? How can you be so careless? After leaving this laptop unattended for so long, the ownership transferred to the owner of the repair shop. Through sheer dumb luck, that's when this material was found on Hunter's laptop. The owner knew something highly suspicious was going on, so he sent the laptop to the FBI sometime in 2019, but not before making a copy of the laptop's hard drive. This copy would turn out to be extremely useful. After not receiving an adequate response, the repair shop owner turned over the hard drive to the office of Rudy Giuliani. That's how we are hearing about all of this now. If it were up to the FBI, would we have ever heard about this? What's on the laptop, though? Well, apart from some, shall we call it, interesting photos of Hunter Biden, there was a trove of incriminating emails showing Hunter Biden pursuing lucrative deals involving China's largest private energy company, including one Hunter said would be interesting for me and my family. In addition, the email outlined a provisional agreement under which 80% of the equity or shares of a new company would be split equally among 4 people whose initials corresponded to the sender and 3 recipients, with H apparently referring to Biden. The deal also listed 10 Jim and 10 held by H for the big guy. Neither Jim nor the big guy was identified further. The email's author, James Gillier, of the international consulting firm J2CR, also noted, "I am happy to raise any detail with Zhang if there is a shortfall." Zhang is an apparent reference to Zhang Zhengzhan, a former executive director of CEFC China. Another email sent by Biden as a part of an August 2nd, 2017 chain involved a deal he struck with a since-vanquished chairman of CEFC, Ying Jiangming, for half ownership of a holding company that was expected to provide Biden with more than $10 million a year. Yi, who had ties to the Chinese military and intelligence service, hasn't been seen since being taken into custody by Chinese authorities in early 2018. And CEFC went bankrupt earlier this year, according to reports. Biden wrote that Yi had sweetened the terms of an earlier 3-year consulting contract with CEFC that was to pay him $10 million annually for introductions alone. The chairman changed that deal after we met in Miami to launch a much more lasting and lucrative arrangement to create a holding company, 50% owned by me and 50% owned by him. Biden wrote. Hunter Biden responded explaining why this deal was so interesting to him and his family. Consulting fees is one piece of our income stream, but the reason this proposal by the chairman was so much more interesting to me and my family is that we would also be partners in the equity and the profits of the joint venture's investments. A photo dated August 1st, 2017 shows a handwritten flowchart of the ownership of Hudson West, split 50-50 between two entities, ultimately controlled by Hunter Biden and someone identified as chairman. A company called Hudson West opened a line of credit in September 2017. Credit cards issued against the account were used by Hunter, his uncle James Biden, and James's wife, Sarah Biden, to purchase more than $100,000 worth of extravagant items, including airline tickets and multiple items at Apple Incorporated, stores, pharmacies, hotels, and restaurants. The documents obtained by the Post also include an attorney engagement letter executed on September 2017, in which one of Yi's top lieutenants, former Hong Kong government official Chi Ping Patrick Ho, agreed to pay Biden a $1 million retainer for counsel to matters related to U.S. law and advice pertaining to the hiring and legal analysis of any U.S. law firm or lawyer. In December 2018, a Manhattan federal jury convicted Ho in 2 schemes to pay $3 million in bribes to high-ranking government officials in Africa for oil rights in Chad and lucrative business deals in Uganda. Quite the damning evidence, if you ask me. The implications, if this all checks out, is monumental. So far, everything points to this being real. 1, the laptop originated at a repair shop in Delaware, Joe Biden's home state. 2, the incriminating photos of Hunter Biden. 3, all the dates, names, and companies check out. 4, how it was completely and utterly suppressed by multiple social media outlets, including the mainstream media. And about that last one, why were all these social media companies so scared of this story? What about the mainstream media? I haven't heard a peep from them except vague dismissal, not to mention Joe Biden's campaign. It's almost like they are all waiting until after the election for this to be acknowledged, which honestly doesn't look good for any of them. But it might honestly be the best option for them if this all turns out to be true. The behavior from Facebook and Twitter, though, is just downright bizarre and unheard of. They are pretty heavy-handed when it comes to censorship, but this is beyond compare.
Jack Dorsey, the CEO, said later in the day, our communication around our actions on the New York Post article was not great. Blocking the URL with zero context as to why we're blocking, unacceptable, he says.
The Post claims that Joe Biden met with an advisor of the company. Within hours, Facebook announced it was slowing the spread of the article, and Twitter blocked its users from posting links to the story, deeming it potentially unsafe, saying the material violated its rules on sharing information obtained through hacking.
Think about this. If this New York Post story is banned from Twitter because it originated from quote-unquote hacked materials, which these aren't even hacked, does that now mean that everything Edward Snowden revealed is now banned from Twitter? As Li Fang of The Intercept note, hacked materials include the Pentagon Papers, FBI files on COINTELPRO, Trump's tax returns obtained illegally.
They also prevented people from sending it in direct messages. And not only did they lock the New York Post account, they locked Kayleigh McEnany's account. She's the White House press secretary. They locked the Trump campaign account, which is heinous to do. Twitter is meddling in the 2020 election. That's the only way of putting it.
This is the most overt act of big tech censorship we have ever seen.
What do you guys think is happening here? To me, it seems like they're running interference for Joe's campaign, helping him avoid all questioning by just saying it's discredited. Discredited by whom exactly? Nobody is even disputing the validity of these emails. It just shifts to Russian disinformation campaign. What a convenient scapegoat that I'm getting utterly tired of hearing about. This is WikiLeaks and Hillary's emails all over again, but seemingly worse. And this is apparently just 5% of the incriminating material on that laptop. Over the coming days, as we get closer to the election, I'm confident we will be hearing a whole lot more.
I have not taken a penny from any foreign source ever in my life.
Biden's son inked a $1 billion deal with a subsidiary of the Bank of China just 10 days after he and his dad visited the country in 2013.
This is the reason why I've held the view for so many years and continue to hold the view that a rising China is a positive development.
I've seen Vice President Biden saying he never talked to Hunter about his business. I've seen firsthand that that's not true because it wasn't just Hunter's business, and they said they were putting the Biden family name and its legacy on the line.
These emails came from a laptop, an Apple laptop, that was dropped off at a Delaware computer repair shop last year and then abandoned there. After a certain number of days with no payment, the shop's owner took legal possession of the laptop. He looked inside. There were tens of thousands of emails, including exchanges with representatives of foreign companies and foreign governments.
A 2013 trip to China getting new attention this morning, not for what Joe Biden did, but for who he brought with him. His son, Hunter, joining the then vice president on the official visit to Beijing.
I don't know why that's funny. I mean, did you have any in-person briefings?